All right, it is a brand new episode of Flyers Daily. How about for the June 9th, 2025 date, Monday with Meltzer, brought to you by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Lots to talk about with the man. We do it every Monday, even through the summer and the offseason. There's plenty to talk about in this episode of the offseason from PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyHotStove.com. It is Bill Meltzer. You enjoying the final, Bill? Because it's been some crackpot hockey.
2 classic games so far.
Unreal.
I don't have a dog in the fight, but I was happy that Florida won because I want the series to go 7 if at all possible.
I had this fleeting notion that, in that game as it's going back and forth, Edmonton was going to go up 3-0 and then they were going to go 7 because Florida was going to come all the way back and go 7. And then Edmonton would win it in game 7 at home like Florida did last year.
Right.
But, let's speak about this final for a second because these are two. It's a rematch, obviously, so that adds another layer to the story. It adds a layer that, the best player in the world is on the stage, and boy, was he unbelievable in game 2. He's been great all playoffs, but in particular, the double dangle assist. And he doesn't just dangle anybody. Yeah. He dangles Barkov and then Ekblad.
Yes.
The performances have been unbelievable.
Oh, incredible. And Draisaitl, because Draisaitl did not score a goal in the finals last year, and he's been tremendous. Bennett for Florida, he's one of those guys that you watch and you hate him if he's not on your team, but he gets the job done.
Bill, the ultimate, I love Bennett too. He just the way he plays around the net, I think, just creates so much for everyone, sucks everybody down. But the turn for Brad Marchand, I've always been an admitted admirer of Marchand. I like those kind of players. I think they're important. But the adoration that he's getting now from a lot of people that probably hated him before, because you're seeing first and foremost, he may be one of the best deadline grabs since, back in the early 80s when the Islanders, who did the Islanders grab? They grabbed in 1980. I'm trying to think who it was.
When 80?
Yeah, they had a deadline pickup, one of the best of all time.
Oh, Butch Goring?
Butch Goring, yeah.
Yeah.
I've often said deadline pickups usually don't help you a lot. You just kind of fit in and all that, and everybody adjusts to them. But Marchand's meant a ton to them. He gets the shorty in the game and the game winner.
Oh yeah, to this day when Marchand is an open ice 1-on-1 with your goalie, he's still deadly. There was a number of years, over a period of several years, he led the NHL in shorthanded goals because he just lives for those situations, and he's still
great on the breakaway.
Yeah, for sure.
Really, and he did a great job on those 2 breakaways in particular, opening up Skinner. But he didn't go back to the forehand on the overtime goal. He goes to the backhand on that one. But still, the great shoulder fake got Skinner to open up. But the series is tied at 1, and you're right. I want to see 7 games of this. Give me this every day. Shoot it into my veins. Tap a vein, let's go. It's awesome to see. We've had some Flyers news over the week, Bill. We know it was Combine week, and all the important people have been up in Buffalo at the NHL Combine, but we did see the announcement of 2 assistant coach hires for the Flyers. Let's get your thoughts on each of these guys. I don't know much about him. I know, I think you had to say his name, Verratti, has coached in the NHL as an assistant and in the AHL and had some success. So he's got a lot of boxes that I thought were important to check. What do you think of the 2 hires?
I'm interested in the, Verratti's a name that's kind of been out there in past years. I didn't hear much about him this offseason. As you said, he has a pretty wide array of experience for a guy who's still reasonably young. He's coached overseas. He coached in the American League. He, as you said, has been an NHL assistant. I know him more by reputation. His role kind of fits with a little bit of the Bradshaw role, not in terms of the PK and the defense, because he was a forward when he played, but just in terms of being the cerebral kind of a coach, very analytical kind of coach. So from what I understand, even though Danny Briere said, well, that's really going to be up to talk as to which assistants fill which roles, but not that it's unheard of for a guy who was a forward to coach the defense, the PK, but generally you have a former defenseman do that.
Yeah, Emily Perrier coached the PK, and he
did, and Mike Yeo did too.
Yep,
like Yeo coached PK here too. but generally speaking, it's more often than not a former defenseman. I think that Danny Brewer said that they would plan to at some point here this offseason add another assistant, which I think that will be the PK specialist. So I think Verratti will do a little bit more of the Darryl Williams kind of a role, where a little bit of everything.
Overarching.
Yeah, a really overarching kind of role, whereas Yogi Sveikovsky will be he'll be the forwards and power play coach, most likely. I remember Sveikovsky as a player. He was a really he was a fun little player. He was a little finesse forward in an era in the middle of the 90s where teams were kind of heading back in that direction too, right? They size. They were looking for bigger players. But Sveikovsky was a very clever player. Last year, Vancouver was kind of in the middle of the pack on the power play. Honestly, there's nowhere to go but up. I thought it was interesting. One thing Talk said, where I think you hurt a power play by throwing too much at it. Simpler can be better. I'm interested to see what they come up with.
Simple, but all on the same page.
On the same page, right?
Yeah, I mean that's that everybody knows what their job is. Loose puck in the corner. If you're the guy that's got to be going in and winning that race to the puck, and you got to be the guy knowing I got to support it or whatever it might be. When you look at that Vancouver power play, obviously a lot was predicated on Quinn Hughes and that quarterback. I want to get into kind of 5 burning points for this episode with you, Bill. Sure. And the first one I want to get into, because I've seen a little bit of this. I know you've engaged a little bit of this on social media. And this goes back into the season that we were talking about, the value of 2 players in particular. Now, anytime you have a season that goes sideways like the Flyers did, and you finish where you did, and you're picking in the top 6 of a draft, there's going to be certain guys that lose value as part of that equation. Some guys raise their value, whether that's Noah Cates, Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink, maybe some others. But some guys lose value, and it's because the comparison to the season before doesn't meet the expectation of an ascension in their development. And those 2 guys are Owen Tippett and Cam York. Yeah. Now, one guy's locked into a contract for a long time. Another guy's an RFA that is yet to be signed, and we've seen 2 RFAs already signed in Cates and Forster. But both of them, from a fan perspective, and I don't know if this is a vocal minority or the majority of the fan base feels this way, but a lot of those guys are kind of like that. Shoot those guys into the sun. They don't have value. And I say be careful with that, because especially with a new coaching staff coming in, these are 2 of the players that I am most intrigued, because they had a down year comparison to the year prior, and we have a lot of hope for, that I'm interested to see how they respond to Rick Tocchet and a different type of message, but a same level of accountability. I mean, it's no secret that Cam York and John Tortorella didn't have a good relationship. Yeah. I think it's no secret that Owen Tippett doesn't know how good he is. How can Tocchet get through these 2 players is one of the big storylines I'm looking at. And you don't want to trade players when I think their value is a little depressed from where it was 12 months ago.
Yeah, and that's, you will get offers of lesser value.
Yep.
At that point, with Tippett's contract, that he has so much term remaining on it that it's not something you'd even think of eating any cap on. So
eating to eternity.
Yeah. So you're either taking somebody else, another player that another team would want to get rid of, or just taking lesser value in the trade. I think we also have to be careful too when a guy's coming off of an injury. Both guys had injuries this year, and neither guy bounced back from it all that well.
York admitted that to me in his exit interview that we played here. Shoulder too, no less.
Yeah. So no, with Tippett, same thing, upper body. I think with Tippett was a combination of things. His 2 best friends on the team were moved. That didn't help, but that wasn't all of it. I mean, down the stretch, he really, really struggled. His confidence was down. The thing with Tip has always been that he's been streaky. Most goal scorers are streaky to a degree, but with Owen Tippett, I think the bigger issue is that he'll score 7 goals in 9 games and look like a first line guy, and then he'll go a dozen games and might maybe have 1, maybe not score in that stretch. Something we've said on this program a number of times, that for Owen Tippett to take that next step to become that 30 to 35 goal scorer. That absolutely, it's in there. I have no doubt that is in there for. He has to shorten some of those droughts. So instead of 12 games, maybe it's 7 games, and then he's back on track. That's the difference between him scoring 28, 29 goals or him scoring 34, 35. That really, that's there for him. I would like to see his relationship with Rick Tocchet, and I don't think he's going anywhere. So I think it might be a little bit different with Cam York, because he is a restricted free agent this summer. I have a feeling, and just a gut feeling, but that his situation might be one that goes on for a while this summer. I don't think that the two sides are close to agree on term, whether you go bridge deal, whether maybe you go multi-years, and what the cap it would be on that. So you look at a guy who might end up getting moved, although the Flyers aren't going to trade him just to trade him. That is a guy who maybe could be moved to. Also another fact that, okay, Drysdale's part of the mix. Not that you're going to go in with Emil Andre saying he's part of the team, but he's potentially part of the mix.
Yeah,
that's 3 smaller defensemen on the same defense core. Any one individual, even 2 of them, when you're getting to 3 of them, you got to figure out who plays with who and where. So
it leaves you less variability.
For sure, and there's I think there's a whole other level on Cam York too. One of the areas with John Tortorella that I disagreed with the most was that I don't think he ever saw any offensive potential pretty much at all in Cam York. I go to a guy who was the number 1 defenseman on probably the best U.S. national junior team ever.
Yeah.
Power play quarterback did that in college hockey too. Did in the Phantoms for the time he was there. Showed a lot of ability there, and I really liked the way he improved defensively previous year, and that was really nice to see. But I still think there's more offense there. I think that's there in him to be able to do that.
This is where I think the voice can really change him a little bit.
For sure, and I thought that I thought that a big part of the reason for his breakout season, at least as an all-around player of the year before, was because he had a good rapport with Brad Shaw. Even Cam said as much that he really liked working with Shawzy. But we'll see with the new defensive coach, and we'll see with Rick Tocchet too, as to that can make a big difference with the player because it's not just the X's and O's and systems. Really, a large part of his personnel management, and there was an undeniable clash with the previous head coach.
Yeah.
So not that Rick Tocchet or the next assistant coach would be in charge of the defense, not that they're going to babysit him. That's not what they're there for. On the other hand, there might be a better rapport there, a better communication channel that just wasn't there. So I'm interested to see that too once they get the contract situation worked out. Again, assuming that if there are changes in personnel this summer, that might not be one of them, because I'm not totally convinced that it won't be.
But NHL players like to talk to each other about their situation, shared situations especially. What's the likelihood that Cam York ended up on a phone call or text exchange with Quinn Hughes about Rick Tocchet? Quinn Hughes, one of the best defensemen in the league, two-way, loved playing for him. What's the chances there was some kind of communication there between Quinn Hughes and Cam York?
Pretty high.
Yeah.
Pretty high.
Like almost guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, no doubt. After you talk to teammates who might have played for a guy somewhere, the next thing you talk to similar kind of players,
fellow countrymen
who we've known for a number of years, coming from the national program. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think that there was definitely a communication there. Here's what to expect.
Yeah.
Here's where he'll give you some rope. Here's where he won't. Those kind of things. And Quinn Hughes is on the record as being a guy that loved playing for Rick Tocchet. Can we get Quinn Hughes, by the way? Danny, make the call. Now, speaking of that, you mentioned that Cam York, with his contract situation and everything, he could be somebody that could be in a hockey trade. We've heard some rumors of late. I think Elliot Friedman from 32 Thoughts brought it up, and several others. The Flyers are one of a couple of teams or a handful of teams that are interested in the acquisition of Nick Hague. Now, obviously, he brings size to the Flyer blue line. He's not a top pairing guy. But where would he fit on this blue line depth chart, Bill? And whose expense does he come in as?
Good question. I mean, in terms of depth chart, I think the perfect slot for him is number 5, but he'd probably be number 4 here. I mean, he kind of alternated between 4 and 5 in Vegas, obviously on a very good team.
Do you see him playing with Drysdale?
You could try that, because that might be a pairing that would balance each other off. I don't see him. I don't see him as a guy who would, like, you're not going to play with Nick Seeler, for example.
Yeah.
So a little too similar there. I don't think you're going to play him on the top with Sanheim. So maybe with Drysdale. So certainly that kind of a puck moving smaller defenseman that you often see pairings such as those. So it'll be something along those lines. Vegas is a team that is looking for some cap flexibility and whatever. So I do see Haig getting moved. I know that there are people in Flyers hockey ups who believe the Flyers has to get bigger on the blue line and in other places as well to balance things off. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the guy they bring in. And I think he's just fine if you play him 16 minutes a night to 18 minutes a night, depending on the matchup and how it's going that night. He's a nice supporting piece in there, and he's definitely a top 6 in the NHL. I always liked him. It's probably because of the size comparison, but I always kind of compared him against Jamie Alexiak. Alexiak is more of a natural athlete, but I think Haig is a better defender and a smarter player in some ways.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the measurables on Nick Haig? We said he's big. He's 6'6", 245 big. That's very big. He was taken in the second round, 34th overall, so really early second round of the 17 draft. He's played in 364 games, and the most he's ever averaged on ice in a season was in the 23-24 at 1833. Like, for example, this year he averaged just over 16 minutes, almost 17 minutes of ice time for Vegas. That's the right spot for him.
Yeah.
But who comes out? I mean, does that kind of signal the end of Yegor Zamula, or is he a 7? Or do you go with a veteran as a 7?
I mean, what I've seen from Zamula so far, to me, he's a 7.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's had extended looks in the top 6. I don't think the consistency is there.
I think it's the consistency in his style of play that's not there.
Yeah.
Playing with pace is what he's
trying. Playing with pace and decision making too.
Yep.
So, not just moving the puck up ice, because he can do that, but I just think his decision sometimes defending, he'll get caught in no man's land a little bit because he'll be a little indecisive, and then sometimes with the puck too, sometimes he'll get himself into trouble either by getting rid of it too soon or sometimes hanging in a little bit too long. That's something too that particularly early last year with Andre has to learn too, because he was getting clobbered holding onto the puck too long, almost too brave for his own good. So I mean that's all part of the learning curve. But with Zamula, I think to me it's kind of been one step forward, one step back with Zamula overall in his career. And so to me, if I'm doing the depth chart, to me he's your 7 to start with, but that could always change over the course of a year too.
I'll give you 2 examples on Zamula of exactly what you're talking about. There was a game Flyers got scored on. They got scored on 7 seconds later when he threw a pass where he could have just chipped it up off the wall in the neutral zone, threw it across ice through the middle. They ended up going right back down and scoring. I forget who the opponent was. And then another one where his partner pinched down the wall. He didn't read it quick enough to back out into the middle. It was a 2-on-0 the other way. Had he backed out into the middle of the ice and backed out knowing that he was vulnerable if the puck was turned over, and it was, then he would have been there to defend that 2-on-1. Instead, it was a 2-on-0, and they got scored on in that situation. You see those reads, they just click quick enough sometimes, and sometimes it's the simple play. You don't need to go across ice in the middle because you don't see where that guy's coming from to take it and go the other way. Plus, it was a bad time in the game situationally for that to happen. So we'll see where the Nick Haig thing goes over this week coming up, and obviously leading up to the draft coming up in just 2.5 weeks' time. Bill, I believe that sometimes I have Stained wrote a song called Epiphany. I have an epiphany. All the things come together, and I have an Oprah Winfrey aha moment where I go, okay, I see clearly now. And I think I see clearly on this. Let me run this by you. And I'm sure some people are going to pick up on this on social media and say, I didn't think of that. I don't know why I thought of it. But all Russian roads lead to Kaprizov Boulevard. Let me break this down. The early signing of Matvei Michkov and arrival of Matvei Michkov. Then the delivery, unexpected, of Ivan Fedotov. Take out the way he's performed in the NHL. They got him over here after what was a very complicated situation. And under the cover of darkness, seemingly, it just happened all of a sudden. Kolosov obviously came over. Flyers have an undrafted Russian player in Zamula, who we just talked about, who they brought into the bubble many years ago.
Yeah.
They trade for Kuzmenko, then they deliver him to the Kings to get playoff exposure for a new contract, right? All of these Russian entanglements are all connection to one thing. I'd never have seen the Flyers have so much cohesion with the Russians, or Belarusians in this case as well, except for, does it lead to Kaprizov and this relationship that this front office has seemingly cultivated with players of a Russian background? Because it's prominent.
No, it has been.
Well, Shabanov is the other one I wanted to mention.
Yeah, and at different levels of the organization too. I mean, of course, the ultimate example, of course, Michkov, right?
Yeah.
Just bringing him into Voorhees, kind of
play bubble hockey.
Yeah, playing bubble hockey very surreptitiously. The place just happened to be closed down that day, right?
Yeah.
But no, for sure. And the Flyers do have an in in Russia, where look at who, and I mean hiring somebody who had considerable experience coaching in Russia. I mean, a pretty really prominent coach over there.
Yeah, I don't think that's an accident either.
Oh no, absolutely not at all, at all. And I think it's a strategy to try to become a destination for these skilled players. Even a year ago, the Flyers have been able to move up, right? They would have been another situation where drafted a Russian. If the rumors were true in any way, shape, or form. So that's and Demidov is going to be another guy who's going to be another star in this league too.
Totally agree.
He's well on his way. So I think that realizing that if there's a comfort level and you have that in, you can get really prominent players. I mean, Philadelphia market is not New York, but it's close enough to where you have Michkov, right? Maybe a year from now, a Kaprizov will go, hey, maybe that's the place where
Russians love playing together too.
They do, and they seem to play. They seem to play better too.
It's why you saw the pictures of Michkov on the road with Podkolzin having dinner at his house when they were in Edmonton. Those kind of things. Like they like sharing their culture together.
No, for sure. And I mean, you can go all the way back to guys like Fetisov, where he was kind of written off as this aging player who had his best years with Red Army. Then all of a sudden, they had the Russian Five together in Detroit, and Fetisov was looking like a Hall of Famer again. Yeah. Right. So that's no, for sure. I think that there's definitely something to that, and I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. I think that particularly like Keith Jones and Danny Briere are well aware of it, and I think both of them are prioritizing that. So I don't think that's outlandish at all. I actually think it's a thing.
It doesn't mean when you go out and you try and woo Kaprizov that it's a fait accompli that he comes here, but it's an advantage that you have young Russian players here, and that this organization has very good. Diplomatic relations with Russia right now. Ken Hudacek's a big part of that, the job that he does and has done. Kaprizov, I mean, he's 27 right now. He's played 319 games. So he got over here pretty late. He's a fifth-round pick, right? This year he only played 41 games, but he ended up with 56 points. Still scored 25 goals, 31 assists in those 41 games. He's got a 96-point season under his belt. He's got a 108-point season in 81 games under his belt. He's high-end talent. I mean, he's a superstar player. We've been kind of focused on, Eichel, McDavid. Maybe it's Kirill Kaprizov that's the target. And a lot of this Russian relations will go in large part. Shabanov might be part of that as well. I mean, we're hearing some info coming out of the Russian side of the media, which, again, we don't know how true it is. But it looks like the Flyers are the lead contender to land Shabanov.
And with the on the Russian media side too, you always have to know the source, right?
Yep.
The source in this case, Ronco, he's a pretty credible source.
Yeah.
So there is info there. I think with certain sources, particularly in Russia, you just go, okay, well, it is what it is. But in this case, I do think that this is, and actually Anthony Sanfilippo put it out there too, and he's not wrong, where he said, well, whatever's coming is coming from over there, because Russian players, European players in general, but they have two agents. They have one at home who represents them in the KHL, and they have an agent over here who represents them in the NHL. It's not one the same person. And of course, because it's both of their business to communicate, usually their agent overseas has some sense of what's going on over here.
He knows where he's going to lose money.
Yeah, exactly. So they know as to what's going on, and they might know that before we would know some of that stuff over here. So while it is far from a done deal, I do believe that I do believe there's something to it where. At the very least, maybe the Flyers aren't where he ultimately goes. We'll see. But I think the Flyers are a team he's giving serious consideration to. So that's that's going to be fascinating.
Michkov factor too.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So many guys are going to want to play with Michkov, and I don't care who follows who on social media. I never pay much attention to that kind of stuff. But Michkov is a guy a lot of players, not just Russian players, are going to want to play with. Because it's going to be a lot of scoring chances and potentially a lot of money for you. So
it's why getting him over here. Another thing as to why it's great to get him over here early, because he was treated really well here, and there's a lot of off the ice things set up for him to succeed in North America. His family, everybody being taken care of per se, and he becomes your greatest recruiter, player to player, like management to player. Can have an influence on a player. Hey, it's great to be here, blah, blah, blah. But when a player tells a player his experience and it's good, it's why Sean Walker's a great advocate for the Flyers out there because of his time here, or Eric Johnson.
Right.
They carry more weight in player to player kind of assessments than anyone else. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. It will, if he does end up here, it will look like the Flyers are lagging behind it in announcing it, because they will wait until they get the person here to sign the contract. Yeah. So just be aware of that. You're not going to announce something until pen goes to paper. And while everybody may be reporting it's done, they won't acknowledge it until that happens. And that takes getting him here into the country and a lot more. So we'll see how that plays out. Bill, next one here. Obviously, the NHL Draft Combine was last week. There were some rumblings coming out of there. Bowen Byram's available. Half of Buffalo's available. And we're just 2.5 weeks to the draft now. Flyers reportedly in on some, dinners with high-end players in this draft, including Misa, who is projected to go number 2. Do we read anything into that, or do we just, this is a team, this is normal business. It is normal business, but do we read anything into it? Anything you're hearing coming out of the Combine?
I'm more interested sometimes in some of the medical information that's coming out, or if you hear somebody had a particularly bad interview. I'll go back to 2017 because there were some undercurrents that Nolan Patrick didn't interview very well.
I'm shocked by that.
Right? I totally shocked. The way that it played out here. Yeah, it made total sense.
As somebody who has interviewed him many times, I'm stunned.
Yeah, I know. I mean, no one's so verbose and so forthcoming in interviews, but sometimes you'll hear that kind of stuff coming out of the Combine. I remember Josh Ho-Sang was an example. Wow, this is a cocky kid. He really put off some of the teams that he interviewed with. There's
confident and there's cocky. They're different.
Right. Yeah. You want to see confidence. You don't want to see where the player thinks they have nothing left to learn. Right.
Yeah.
So I look at that kind of stuff. I look at the medical information, like with Roger McQueen, as to okay, well it sounds like his back is healthy. So how does that affect his draft status? Because that was the big concern going in. So that's the kind of stuff I look at. I don't worry too much about what teams interviewed which players or who had dinner with who. I'll give you an example. I'll just give you two examples. Sean Couturier, they already had the combine, of course, by that point in time. Sean Couturier never interviewed with the Flyers. They didn't talk to him. Now the Flyers acquired the pick later on, but still, you generally. And the reason why he didn't interview with the Flyers is they felt they had a pretty complete book on him. So they felt like, okay, the other people have more gaps to fill. We know what he is. We've talked to him enough times during the course of the season, his coaches, his teammates. We know what his personality is like and how he is as a player. So we're going to talk to other players who we want to know a little bit more about. That can certainly be the case, or it can be a scheduling thing. Simone Gagne went into his draft year absolutely completely convinced that the Montreal Canadiens were going to draft him. And there's that funny story because his teammate Chouinard, who actually Eric Chouinard ended up playing briefly with the Flyers. They were junior teammates. And Simone Gagne, you can actually Google, you actually punch it up on YouTube and look at the 1998 draft. And when they say from the Quebec Ramparts, Gagne starts to stand up, right? And they say Eric Chouinard, he sits back down because he was so sure everything he'd heard was Montreal's taking you.
Yeah.
And so he had dinner with them even the night before. And Montreal had 3 first-round picks, and he was positive. So you got to be really careful with that stuff, as saying, okay, well, he met with X team. We're hearing X team loves this player. There's so many smoke signals that are put out this time of year. Don't put too much stock in who had dinner with who and who interviewed who. But in terms of maybe how a guy does in the physical testing, for example, I think that if a guy wasn't able to test like this year, Desnoyers, because he has the wrist situation, maybe if the team's on the fence, okay, well, we don't know if he's going to start next year on time. He's going to have procedures that might knock him down a spot. Or if a guy had maybe some conditioning concerns and he does especially well on some of the tests, that can help a guy. So really, I think those are the takeaways. Really, those are the takeaways that I look for out of the combine.
Did you take anything away when Casey Middlestad couldn't do a pull up? Remember that?
Yes. Boy, he's
couldn't do a single pull up.
Yeah, he still hears about it. Yeah, or the guys who do the Wingate test, the bike test, and they're throwing up within 40 seconds. Those guys hear about that for years too. So,
Bill, let's get to some ancillary things real quick. First of all, Penn State hockey tweeted out the googling eyes the other day. Is Gavin McKenna going to be saying "we are"?
That would be absolutely phenomenal.
I'd be so happy for Guy Godowski if that's the case.
Oh, for sure. Well, the way that program has grown, just hats off to those guys, because it's a real legitimate national program. It's
very quickly too.
Very quickly happened very quickly for them and on merit. Yeah. So there would have been a time a few years ago where they were so fledgling and trying to establish themselves, where the number 1 pick next year is going to go to Penn State, okay, but now, that's certainly, that'd be fantastic. That'd be terrific.
Yeah, I think what that would do for Penn State hockey would be remarkable.
Great, it'd be great.
He's just not a first round pick. I mean, he's a generational player.
Yes.
I mean, his numbers are Mario Lemieux, better than Lemieux's at the same age and situation. So we'll see if that happens. It'll be a tough ticket to get. Penn State, if he goes there, it's a tough ticket now. But I remember that when I was in high school, talking to them, and we're going to be Division I before you would graduate college was what Joe Batista told me.
Yeah.
It took me a while to graduate college, Bill, but it didn't take me that long because, of course, they joined the Big Ten in they went independent in 1990. They joined the Big Ten in 91, the year I graduated. And then they didn't actually become a D1 hockey program until just like 15 years ago. So
about 15, 16 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so it took me a while. It didn't take me that long, Joe. But, yeah, I love seeing the program doing so well and the growth. It's just tremendous getting to the Frozen Four this year as well. We'll see if McKenna ends up there. One last thing, Bill. I want to get to the Pete DeBoer firing. We talked about it, a couple weeks ago, 9-0 in elimination games. And, I mean, where he was after, beating the Avs in the first round and then Vegas in the second round or Winnipeg in the second round, then boom, get knocked out in 5 against the Edmonton Oilers. I don't think there's a lot of shame in that, although maybe the way it looked. Obviously, the way Ottinger was pulled, which we talked about, we didn't like the way he was pulled, not that he was. You surprised to see DeBoer move on? I know you're close with that Dallas organization. Jim Nill's a very calculated GM. He's not a reactionary.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't rush into the decision. He must have come to the conclusion that it was an untenable situation. They couldn't reel back in because Ottinger's not going anywhere. If that doesn't happen, even if you pull him, right, and you stay with DeSmith the rest of the game, and he just falls on the sword and just says, we were behind 2-0 quickly. I had to do something to spark the team.
I had to go into my bag.
Right, and if that's all he says, and I think he's still the coach.
Yep, I agree.
It reminded me, and actually Bundy, Chris Terrian, he wrote about on Hot Stove. He said the first thought he had, and I had the same thought, was Terry Murray. Mm-hmm. If you go back in Flyers history, if you wanted to surprise people with the trivia question as to what coach had the highest playoff winning percentage in Flyers history, it wasn't Fred Shero even. It wasn't Mike Keenan. It was Terry Murray.
Wow.
Terry Murray, his first year here, got the Flyers within 2 wins of the Cup Finals. And then next year they did lose in 6 to Florida in the second round. But the third year they go to the finals again in 15 games, 5 games,
94,
5 games,
95,
5 games.
Or 94, yeah.
Took out Pittsburgh in 5.
Yep.
They took out Buffalo in 5, and they took out the Rangers in 5. So just in terms of win-loss percentage, and that was after 5 years out of the playoffs. I think if Murph didn't have that choking situation comment, Murph would have been back the next year.
Yeah, but he didn't.
But he didn't. He didn't.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
No. And once he said, and even Eric Desjardins and Bundy was saying that we weren't mad so much as shocked. Yeah. Never a coach say my team is choking, basically. What Murph was getting at was that Detroit had been swept 2 years before by the Devils, and they just lost the year before that to Colorado. It was kind of their turn to win.
Yeah.
For the Flyers, they're really going through the finals the first time, and they weren't ready for it. That's what he was going at. But choking is just such a poisonous word.
Yeah,
that gassed him. That was really it for Murph, and he went from secure to out of a job and a while. And then he had a short stint in Florida, and then unfortunately, he was the coach before the Kings are ready to win.
Yeah,
But Terry Murray's example, very good coach. Pete DeBoer, very good coach. It went from secure to out of a job because of, just like that.
You think DeBoer did it on purpose because he knew that his message wasn't getting through? In a way, I don't think he did it on purpose because I think you're too emotional to think that far, that many chess moves in advance at that time.
Yeah, I think it was, although he said it in a calm tone of voice, which typically does anyway. Yeah. I think he let emotion get in the way of better judgment because he tried to do a little damage control after that, in saying that there's there isn't a bigger Jake Ottinger guy out there than I am, and we'll be able to work together. I was really kind of referring to a sample size of what happened in the series against Edmonton last year and this year. He still is a young goalie, et cetera. It was too late.
He got defensive.
Yeah. So
as soon as he went into that posture, it was done.
Yeah, and at that point it was done. I think Jim Nill figured, we have to pull the trigger here. I'm really interested to see who can get them the next step, though, because they made the finals, right? And then they get 1 year out, and then 3 years in a row get to the conference finals with Pete DeBoer, who took the Devils to a final before that.
He's been 6 of the last 7 conference finals.
Yeah, I mean he's a good coach, right? And I don't know who would be the right coach to take him that step, but clearly Jim Nill looked at it and he figured we have to make a change here. So it did surprise me. When I predicted wrong, because my thought process on it, Jason, was they're gonna sit. Nill will sit down with DeBoer and say to him, "Listen, this can never ever happen again." DeBoer will say, "I screwed up. It'll never happen again. I want you to talk to Jake, right?"
Yep.
I'll
talk to him and you talk to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought that, okay, we'll put it past us. It was really a bad week because but that's all it takes sometimes. So
Jim Nill's not one of those guys to go for like an obvious push me over the top coach, go grab Laviolette or John Tortorella, to get that last step. He could go totally off the board. And I think the way that team's constructed, somebody's going to walk into a good situation there in Dallas. We'll see how it goes for him. Make sure you read Bill's stuff at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyHotStove.com. All great sources for off-season Flyers and much more information. Check those all out. We'll be back coming up Wednesday. We'll continue our Exit Day interview series and much more. Join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.